Right, good morning, everybody from around the world. I know some of you in the States got up early this morning to join the talk, which we appreciate a lot. And just want to welcome everybody to the second episode of the talk that we're going to give today. Firstly, I just want to run through the rules quickly for those of you that are joining for the first time. We'll start the presentation shortly, and if you have any questions, there is a Q&A box at the bottom of your screen, which you can type your questions in. I will try and answer as many as possible at the end of the talk, so please don't be shy to type questions in there if you guys would like to. Like I said, right at the end of the session, we will have a quick look. I'll try and answer as many as possible. But for those of you that are joining us for the first time today, in the first episode we looked at extreme nature and all the conservation experiences that I've been lucky enough to be part of in the last 20 years or so. This will be my 20th year this year in conservation, and it's been a journey for me of many years where I've been lucky enough to be exposed and seen a lot of. I'm hoping to share some of those experiences with you today again. Some of the topics that we're going to cover today is there's an unexpected visitor in a car, and why we should respect animals, wild animals, even if they are tame. I think a lot of people have learned over the years that wild animals can be quite dangerous, even if they are considered tame. So we should always have a healthy respect for them. And we're going to chat about hidden dangers in sundowners, why hyenas can leave a mark, and how well you can basically climb a tree as well. We're going to have to look at that today. And then sleeping elephants, which is quite an interesting one. And then the last subject will be to chat a little bit about catching vultures. But just first off today is Endangered Species Day. And as you guys know, the Endangered Wildlife Trust works extensively on quite our name says, we work quite a lot on endangered species. Some of the main focus animals with endangered species is obviously like you guys in the picture here, the African wild dog, which we're monitoring across Southern Africa. Our team of the Carnivore Conservation Program work day and night, literally, even through lockdown now. It was considered an essential service. So the guys have been removing snares from wild dogs. They've been catching wild dogs that have escaped from reserves, and they've been all over the place trying to keep these guys alive. It's also at the moment it's very close to the wild dog denning season, so they'll start looking for dens. At the moment, we had a very successful denning season last year, thanks to the hard work and dedication of some of the EWT staff and other stakeholders to try and keep these guys alive and going. So, and then the other species which we also work extensively on in our cheetah meta population project. And the species point of view is obviously cheetahs. This cheetah I photographed this cheetah in Red Flag outside Tshwane, close to the city, where she had these cubs, and these cubs got moved as part of our cheetah meta population. But we also work on, as the Endangered Wildlife Trust, work on lots of amphibians, which our amphibian program works on, the threatened amphibian program works on. And then we also obviously work on vultures and a few other species. So there's quite a number of endangered species. So today we are celebrating a lot of those species and the dedicated people that try and that work hard, tirelessly to try and conserve them. So yes. All right. The first story I want to share with you guys is that we had a while back, many years ago, I had a call one morning from a lady that said to me she was busy doing wildlife research when all of a sudden she heard a thud on the roof of a car, and she wasn't sure exactly, but then she saw something move behind the seat and she wasn't sure, so she called me to come and investigate to try and see what the problem could possibly be. I then went in under the seat of a car and had a look in. Her back window of a vehicle was open at the time. And unfortunately for her, what we saw is exactly what the picture shows you guys there. I saw this black mouth sort of looking me straight in the eye when I looked under the seat. And it was, in fact, a black mamba that managed to fall inside a car and got trapped under a seat. So we then had to get a snake catcher in. For those of you that don't know, a species like a black mamba is obviously a very dangerous snake and neurotoxic venom. And it's when trapped in a vehicle like that, you really need to have a specialist come and take it out. But long story short, the mamba ended up being just over 2.5 meters and trapped under the seat of the car, which the lady drove happily back to camp with under the seat without really knowing what danger was just underneath her seat. And snakes get trapped in cars and under hoods of cars very often. It is a story which we have encountered numerous times over the years. So it is a bit of a problem in areas where you have snakes and humans interacting, and they're often under the hoods of cars, also nice and warm. So we've removed numerous snakes from mambas to spreading cobras to pythons, especially like the hoods of cars over the years under these cars. But this specific story very luckily had a happy ending. And for those of you that are more familiar with black mambas, or those that are not, this is you can see that smile which people normally talk about, which you see when you encounter a mamba like this. So yeah, that's, and then we obviously get 2 species of mamba in South Africa. We also get the green mamba on the coast. Yeah, this is so mambas. Yeah, what people often ask me, what are they supposed to do when they see these snakes? Very often standing still and letting them pass is quite possibly the best thing to do. But you do not want these guys in confined areas where they're trapped or cornered. And obviously never try and catch these snakes unless you guys are not specialists. So they are extremely, they could be potentially dangerous if cornered. And then over the years, I've been lucky stroke unlucky enough to have worked with quite a number of animals found out in the field. Just to clarify, none of these animals that I show you guys were animals that were taken from the wild, etc. These were all abandoned animals in camps or, on game drive, game translocation experiences. We often had animals that got born on trucks. The specific one was a little bontebok that was born in the Eastern Cape on a truck, and we managed to raise it and release it back into the wild, which was a lovely success story. And then also, you often encounter animals like cheetahs, etc. This cheetah cub was rescued after being stuck on the other side of a fence. Also, like I said, very often you're lucky, and these stories have a happy ending. In this case, this is the cheetah many years after that, which managed to be relocated into the wild, and she was lucky enough to have a few sets of cubs, successfully raising cubs and contributing to the cheetah meta population. So you do often have success stories. But the big thing is, if you look at buffalo here, for those of you that don't know, disease-free buffalo are being bred across South Africa in numerous areas outside of the red line, and this has become a common sight for people to interact with these animals more. And I remember from my previous talk, I had a question where somebody asked me, what's the animal that I'm the most scared of, or cautious around, and buffalo were definitely one of those, and still ranks as one of the animals that I'm fully aware of, that you have to try and respect them a lot. And in these camps, what very often happens is you have to interact with them a little bit closely. They often get fed because they are kept in smaller areas and bred, like I said. So you do have interactions with these animals, and like here's a little buffalo calf that was born in the buffalo breeding project that I was involved in years ago. So these animals, and the story around this is one of the previous managers on the reserve where I was managed to one day get out and put out the feed for the buffalo without noticing a male buffalo approaching from behind, and unfortunately for this person, the buffalo interacted with them and picked them up and threw them over a fence, luckily over the fence to the other side, and managed to give this guy close to 150 stitches just across his rump, etc. So it's a really, really, animals need to be respected, even though you you do have animals that are tame. I mean, I know of stories down in the Lowveld where people were even killed by a duiker. For those of you that don't know, the duiker is one of the smallest animals, or smallest antelope species that we have in South Africa. Really tiny little buck that we have, little antelope, and they've got really sharp little horns. And in this case, those little horns penetrated one of the arteries of the person, and obviously, unfortunately for that person, they didn't make it. So, even the smallest, tiniest antelope can still be dangerous. So, never consider a wild animal tame. I would always caution against that. We know there's many stories around that, and as the EWT, we really don't encourage people to go to these areas where you can pet animals and tame animals, etc. We really want to try and keep the animals wild and free out in the wild, and for people to view them out in the wild. So yeah, always have the utmost respect for these animals. They might seem tame, but they're not. So and they've got potential to really hurt people. Then I want to share a story with you guys. We all know lions, like you guys can see in the picture over here, and especially a lioness can be quite a handful when you encounter them at the wrong time, at the wrong place. So many years ago, we were busy with a research project in one of the biggest game reserves of South Africa, and we had a lady from the United Kingdom that came, and she came over to do some research on some of the grasses in South Africa, and especially in this game reserve, and the burning regime that was followed there to look at the impact of burns. She was lucky enough to have her parents over at the time, and they suggested one afternoon that we go to the closest hill where we could go and have sundowners in the afternoon, which I happily wanted to join them for. And we drove to this area. We had an armed ranger with us at the time. And we had to. We always normally when you go out into the field, especially in the bigger game reserves, you go with an armed ranger for obvious reasons, because there are animals like lions, etc., in the area that you need to be very cautious of. I then got out with the field ranger when we got to the little hill where we stopped, where we wanted to stand and have sundowners and watch the sunset. We then basically walked down to the hill, and we walked up, and as we got just to the top of the crest of the hill, luckily the rest of the lady and her parents from the UK at the time was behind us, and we got to the top of the hill first, me and the armed ranger. And as we got to the top of the crest of the hill, we encountered a lioness, which we obviously didn't expect to be present at the time. She was extremely unhappy with us. She came and she charged us extensively for a period of what felt for like half an hour, which was probably only about 30 seconds. She came and she charged us probably in excess of 10 to 15 times. And luckily it was only the two of us at the top of the crest of the hill, and we managed to back away. I remember also from my previous talk, people asked, what do you do with lions when you're in situations like this? The last thing you do is run, and I know it sounds easy to say don't run, but it is the last thing that you do. And in this particular case, that is basically what saved us at the end of the day, is that we managed to back down slowly, keep on facing the lioness. Like I said, the ranger was armed. Luckily, he didn't have to fire a warning shot at the time, but the lioness probably charged us in excess of 15 times continuously, trying to get to us. We managed to communicate with the party behind us that they had to get back on the vehicle and stay in the vehicle. Like I said, what felt like an eternity, we were lucky enough to get back to the vehicle, and she literally charged us until we were both back in the vehicle, and we managed to get out of there. So, and on closer inspection, we realized that the lioness had cubs, which is one of those scenarios, like I show you guys on the screen here, which you don't really want to find yourself in, especially when they have the cubs hidden in areas like this. So yes, sundowners, as nice as they seem, and to have a cold beer after a hard day in the bush is always part and parcel of what a lot of guys do when you work out in the bush. We very often say that, an old saying amongst the conservationists and is that we get paid in sunsets. So that's a common term because most of you know that, you know, salaries when it comes to working out in the bush is not a lot of people do it for passion and love. And that's why the old saying is always that you get paid in sunsets, which is a sunset like this with a baobab tree is something that, you know, money can't buy. So so sundowners can turn into quite an interesting. We were lucky enough that day to have made it. There's a lot of guys that it doesn't end well when lioness have small cubs like that. So yeah, that area was avoided then after that for the next few months. And definitely experience when sitting back in the car and seeing the actual foam of the mouth from a lioness that ended up on my shoes once I had the time to look. And yes, it really was a bit of a hair-raising experience, but luckily ended quite well for all of us. Over the years, I've also been lucky enough to work quite extensively with predators like brown hyena, pictured here, which was released into a reserve. Once again, for those of you that don't know, we've got two species of hyena in South Africa, which is brown hyena, like in the picture over here, and then we have a species also called the spotted hyena. For those of you that are lucky enough to get into Kruger National Park and other game reserves, you will often hear hyenas at night in the African bush calling, and that's quite a familiar sound for most people out in the part of being out in the wild is being exposed to these nocturnal noises, which is something now sitting in Johannesburg, to be perfectly honest, which I'm really missing, and being out in the field. Those of you that are lucky enough to be on reserves, you know, you can still have that kind of noises in the evening, which is incredible to have around you and creates a wonderful ambiance. The story I wanted to share with you guys is very often, you know, on smaller game reserves, you have to manage predator populations, and spotted hyenas being one of them. I think if spotted hyena numbers get out of hand, you know, that could have a significant impact on species and on the survival of some of the more endangered species like cheetah and a few others. So yeah, spotted hyenas often have to be relocated, like you guys can see over here. The spotted hyena, you see they've got quite a nice set of teeth there on them. This is just a young hyena, but you guys know that spotted hyenas they've got the strength to actually break the hip bone of a buffalo. That's how strong their jaws are. So they've got extremely strong jaws. We had a young veterinarian that helped us with the relocation a while back, and she was quite adamant that all the hyenas had to get B12 shots before they were relocated. We managed to capture 5 hyenas at the time, and this young veterinarian said to me that she wanted to get back into a crate quickly to give a hyena a B12 shot, which I at the time said to her, I don't think it's the best idea in the world. You know, I think we should rather wait and see if you know, we can rather avoid giving a hyena a B12 shot. I think they'll be perfectly fine. But she was adamant, and you know, that's what she learned many years ago at the veterinary school. And long story short, she climbed down into the crate, which I helped her with, and she gave the hyena a B12 shot while being with it inside the crate, and ended up with the hyena turning around and biting her on her arm. Luckily enough for her, it was very cold at the time, and she had a very thick jacket on, which helped her to limit the bite to her arm. And I managed to pull her out of the crate fast enough with the hyena attached at the end of the day. The hyena eventually let go, and we could get the veterinarian out. She was lucky to just have a few scrapes and a very blue arm after that. But like I said, hyenas have extremely strong jaws, and they could be potentially very dangerous to people if once again cornered, etc. So you have to take caution when you work with these animals very often. And one other subject which I wanted to cover today is this is a picture of a friend of mine many years ago being chased up a tree by a buffalo. But you have to have extreme climbing skills when you're working out in the bush and you manage reserves or do anti-poaching patrols, or even track animals on foot, ranges and track. There's many stories which people can tell you where they've been chased up into trees. Of course, trees work when you have species like buffalo or rhino. chasing you, even hippo. That's a good plan. But for those of you that don't know, lions can climb trees. Obviously, leopards can climb trees, and obviously elephants can push over trees. So it works for most species. It's a very good tool with buffalo, like you guys can see in the picture over here. I think this buffalo bull, if I recall correctly, kept this guy pinned up in the tree for a good hour or two. So and they don't really give up very easily. So you have to distract them to try and get them to leave you alone. Rhino also, black rhino. There's many stories over the years of people monitoring black rhino that had to climb up trees to try and get away from danger. And it does work very often. But the one story which really sticks with me is many years ago we were darting buffalo, and it was in a herd, and we removed some of the individuals out of the herd. And one of the trackers at the time, which helped load the buffalo, one of the buffalo went down in quite a thick part of bush, and we had to carry the buffalo out with a stretcher. Quite a few guys, about 8 of us. For those of you that don't know, buffalo are quite heavy, and they're not just easy to pick up and carry around. So you have to put them on a stretcher and take them through, which we did. And while we were halfway there, one of the other buffaloes realized that they wanted to put a stop to us taking one of the members of their herd, and charged us. A lot of us managed to get away into the vehicle very fast, but some of us had to get up into a tree and climb a tree, which the one unfortunate gentleman managed to wedge himself into a tree, into a knobthorn tree. So a knobthorn tree has got a lot of thorns. It's an acacia tree, so it's got a lot of thorns all over. And he managed to wedge himself into that tree and climb so high, and got himself stuck to such a degree that we had to use a chainsaw to eventually cut certain parts of the branches and some other tools to try and get this person free from the tree. So it was quite an experience for this person, and I think we eventually ended up removing close to 60 or 70 thorns from this person's arms and legs and all over the place. So yeah, it's very often a question of how well can you climb a tree. Some guys can do it really well. Others don't do it well at all, but it saved many a ranger and conservationist and researcher's life over the years, the fact that we are agile enough to be able to climb trees. So moving on to elephants, like you guys can see here, elephants move around quite a lot through the day and even in the night, and they continuously feed. You can think now, for an animal that size, you have to basically feed all day long and have a lot of water every day to try and keep that big bodies going. So elephants, over the years, many people have contacted me to say there's a dead elephant. They managed to find a dead elephant. I've seen it lately on quite a few platforms, on the social media platforms, reported that there's a dead elephant lying next to the road. So what people don't know is that elephants, especially baby elephants, down like this picture will show you over here. So I've seen a whole herd of elephants, 6 or 7 of them lying down together like this. It basically looks like they are dead until you get close enough to them, and then you realize they're not. So but yeah, I've had an elephant a few years back also sleep for probably a good 7 or 8 hours. It was reported in the morning that the elephant was lying down, and doesn't seem like the elephant was well. We went in on horseback many hours after that, about 5-6 hours after that, and managed to get right to the elephant and with a veterinarian, and realized that the elephant was actually still breathing and fine. And when we returned an hour or two after that, the elephant was up and feeding and very happy to charge us. So the elephant was 100% perfectly fine. So I've experienced elephant sleeping. That particular elephant slept for almost 8 hours lying down. It's incredible. So a lot of people will often think that, when you have elephants like that, lying down, that something is wrong with the elephant. Not necessarily. So yeah, they often lie down and basically to rest. Like I said, they feed for most of the day, at night very often, and they need to rest those big bodies. So this is quite a common sight for elephants to lie down like this. So. And then later on in my career, I was exposed to quite a few times where we caught birds, and especially vultures. So for those of you that don't know, vultures are one of the endangered species. Like we said earlier today, today is Endangered Species Day, and we celebrate a lot of our colleagues and that work on endangered species are ones that dedicate their lives to this. Vultures have a lot of challenges that they face. In the Endangered Wildlife Trust, we work a lot on the wildlife and energy side of things, where power lines, where vultures collide and get electrocuted by power lines. There's the Eskom EWT strategic partnership, where we work together to retrofit lines and proactively get lines sorted out for specifically for vultures and other large birds of prey. But vultures are also faced with huge challenges around poisoning. I don't know if, for those of you that saw in the news recently, there was the biggest poisoning case to date, I think, in the world, in Burkina Faso, I think it was, and that happened in the last month or so. So it is a really huge challenge that vultures face, is the fact that they get often poisoned at carcasses. Very often secondary poisoning happens when these birds circle up in the air. They often point out carcasses. So there's a lot of challenges that these birds face. There's also habitat loss, etc. But catching these guys is never easy. You can sit days on end and wait in a capture enclosure, set up a capture enclosure, and wait for days on end for these birds to actually come in and feed on a carcass before you're lucky enough to catch them. And this particular bird is a Cape vulture, which they are the cliff nesting vultures. In Johannesburg, we have colonies close to Skeerpoort and Nooitgedacht, which is the closest Cape vulture colony, if I'm correct, in South Africa to a city. So that's just at Hartbeespoort Dam, just outside of Tshwane and Gauteng. So yeah, we managed to catch quite a few of these birds in trap cages and with nooses over the years. Our birds of prey program work extensively on vultures and still to this day capture them. But this specific project, which I want to tell you guys about, was a project where we managed to catch about 25 of these birds and fit them with tracking devices. There's a picture of me with one of the birds down at Moholoholo Rehabilitation Center, where we managed to catch some of them. We ended up following these birds for some of the tracking devices lasted for up to 4 years, almost 5 years, which we're lucky enough. It's got a little solar panel at the back, and you can track these birds. Some of these birds ended up traveling for more than 600-700 kilometers, in 24 hours or so, going from one area to another. Some of the birds that we caught down in Kruger National Park and close to Polokwane ended up going as far as Malawi, into Angola. Some of them ended up going into the Kalahari Desert, which is not uncommon for whiteback vultures and others, but this particular bird was a Cape vulture that went all the way into the Kalahari Desert, which is quite far for them to travel, and quite unknown territory for them and on that side of the world. So these birds, we always have a saying: have wings, can fly. So there's no way that you can really contain these birds. In this particular project, when we caught these birds, I learned a lot of lessons, as well as, if you pick up vultures or take vulture out of nests, then what can also happen is they love to just let go when you take them down from these nests. So you often get covered in vulture excrement when you remove them down from nests and when you catch them. So and that's something that your wife is never happy about when you come home and you've got a set of washing that contains some vulture excrement. So that's a smell that you don't just get out. So yes, it's definitely challenging working with these birds. And then those beaks that you guys can see in the picture over there, they are very sharp, and they can literally take the finger off if you don't handle these birds correctly. So I've been lucky enough to work with quite a few experts over the years who taught me the ropes and told me which side is the sharp end and which side is the blunt end. So and then also, like you guys can see, just going back one slide there, vulture's feet over there, you can see that's also quite a set of talents that they have there. So you must also be very careful of that part. But these are really, really incredible birds, and I wanted to end today's talk with vultures because they probably, of all the endangered species in South Africa, one of the species that are under the most pressure. They get it from all sides, like I said earlier, from power lines, from wind farms, from poisoning, from habitat loss, from food shortages, etc. So these birds are really birds that need our help. And poisoning cases are definitely on the increase. And we see quite a lot of fatalities around power lines as well, like I said earlier. And there's a lot of hard work that needs to go in to try and save these birds. Like I said, they travel crazy distances in a day, and they travel very fast as well, very often. So there's no way that you can manage them like a cheetah or a wild dog, or inside a confined area. It's easier for them to manage. These birds can literally fly all over, and they expose themselves to a lot of dangers. So these birds are very important to try and protect. I think our birds of prey program will also have a talk around vultures, which they will show you some of the distances that these guys cover, and some of the extraordinary things that these birds do. So yeah, I'll leave that over to them, and I'm happy to take quite a few questions now from you guys. I'll try and do that in the Q&A after this. Okay, I'm going to try and work through my way through the questions over here, and then try and answer as many as possible. Pooja Deb asked me, how do you think both wild and captive animals are coping with COVID? Pooja, I think that there's been a lot of social media around the fact that animals have moved back into a lot of cities. I mean, in South Africa alone, I recall seeing a video around a male kudu in the middle of Tshwane, walking around in the streets there close to Silver Lakes golf course. So we've seen some of the animals like that. We've also seen a lot of animals lying around in roads in Kruger National Park. There's been a lot of people sharing that. The Skukuza golf course, which is in the middle of Kruger National Park, you've seen a lot of animal interactions there, and now with the people leaving. So, I think there's been a lot of positives from this. Very often, you'll get that with our wildlife and roads program, for example, you've had a lot less animals being hit in the roads, being a lot less traffic. So yes, I think that the wild animals are definitely embracing the fact that they don't have to deal with people all the time. But in Africa, tourism is a very important part of what we do, and that keeps a lot of our economies going, and provides a lot of jobs to people in quite remote areas. So I think a lot of the tourism guys are very keen to get back up and going. So it's definitely, I think, a bit of a break for the animals, but maybe they miss us to a degree as well. So we will, but I definitely miss them quite a lot. So it's quite important for me to try and get back into the bush. I think for a lot of us that love the bush so much. With regards to captive animals, I don't really know. I mean, we don't really work with captive animals, but I know a lot of the zoos, etc., are closed. So I think those animals are also not exposed to people as much as they used to. So I hope that answered your question. Nathan Rawlinson asked me, why don't we see vultures in the Pilanesberg National Park? Very good question, Irene. Sorry, it's Irene Rawlinson. Very good question, Irene. We've got a few theories around that. Historically, vultures did occur in Pilanesberg National Park, and they do actually occur in some of the outskirts. There has recently been 1 or 2 sightings of birds in the middle of the park again, but we do think that it's got something to do with the magnetic fields around the mountains there, being an old volcanic crater. It might have something to do with that. It might be historic that the birds were persecuted there over the years, and that they're just not comfortable, getting down on carcasses there and feeding on them. That might be the case as well. But our vulture experts would probably be better placed to answer a lot of that. But it is definitely an interesting observation, and we have picked that up over the years. But like I said, we have recently, though, on the other side, we have recently seen quite a few vultures return. I've personally saw white-backed vulture in the middle of Pilanesberg, right next to Monkwe Dam, about 6 months ago or so. So there is definitely a lot of vultures are basically returning, and with black rhino conservancy being added to Pilanesberg, I think it's to the northwest of the park. There's been a lot of vulture activity, and I think there's some vulture breeding there as well. So that's definitely been there's definitely been some activity in the last while. Yeah, from Karini Mupani, I've got thank you about speaking about vultures. It's all about beliefs and superstitions, but I love them. You are correct. Yeah, there's a lot of beliefs and superstitions around vultures, and some of them are quite modern, unfortunately. You know, there's some of vulture body parts being sold, etc., that that people believe that because vultures can see so well and see carcasses so far, that they will win the lottery when they eat the eyes of the vultures, that they will see into the future and then win the lottery. So there's a lot of superstitions and beliefs around it. I'm not an expert on it, but you are right that we have over the years, and I'm glad that you love them. I love them too. I think they're amazing birds and animals. I think they're totally underestimated, and we don't know enough about those birds, and we should really protect them because they keep a lot of diseases at bay. I think the last estimate I saw, that they're worth about $120,000 each, just in cleaning up our nature out there. So it's very important that, we keep those birds alive and going. So, yeah, I've got another question here. So I'm going to try and, Ansi asked, what is B12? Sorry, Ansi, B12 is an injection. It's like a vitamin that you inject. I think people also tend to take that. It's a B12 injection. It's a vitamin injection, and it burns quite a bit. So I think for the hyena story, for those of you that don't know, if you now can imagine a half asleep hyena and you inject them with B12, then they wake up with a burning sensation, normally in their rumps. Then you get quite a reaction out of it. So I hope that yeah. So yeah, I've got quite a few questions here which I see around human-wildlife conflict. Yeah, we do experience human-wildlife conflict between hyenas and predators. It definitely happens. Up into the rest of Africa, it's quite a big problem, in South Africa as well. And we, like I mentioned earlier on Endangered Species Day, we had some of our guys out catching wild dogs this week, as essential services with all their permits, etc., to try and help with the human-wildlife conflict side of things. So we do have that very often. So we do deal with that quite a bit. Yeah, so I've got another question here from Hugo saying, hi, Constant. Can tracked vultures help the section rangers anti-pony poaching units in places like Kruger National Park to show that rhinos are being, when rhinos are killed by poachers? And can they follow up on the tracks and apprehend them? I mentioned it briefly earlier. Look, it is quite a controversial thing, and something that, we have picked up in the last while, that vultures do circle when there are carcasses, and they pick up big carcasses like rhinos and elephants and many others. So yeah, rangers and poachers are also aware of the fact that that vultures can show carcasses out to field rangers. So it is quite a big problem for vultures at the moment, that they do get poisoned around that. That's often what we call like a secondary poisoning that happens because rhino was poached and the horn was removed, and then vultures get poisoned secondary to that. So it is quite a big problem. So yes, yeah, it can be used, but it's also, like I said in the same breath, it is quite a big problem. So yeah. Then Taryn has asked me, what animal am I the most scared of? Gee, Taryn, it's a good question. I have a healthy respect for all of them, to be perfectly honest. Like I mentioned earlier, a vulture can take your finger off with a single bite. A martial eagle can take your arm off, and a hyena, is also. But I think the ones that I'm the most cautious of, let's put it that way, is quite possibly hippo and buffalo. I think those two are the ones that don't really give you second chances. I've been lucky enough not to have too many interactions with leopard, but I know leopard also don't really warn you. That's also you're basically in trouble when you deal with a leopard and they don't give second warnings really. So, but yeah, I would say definitely I would be hippo. I would say hippo definitely at the top of my list. Yeah, and then I've got a question here. If you could be any animal, what would you be? Okay, I'm a big fan of leopards. I think that they're amazing cats. But then also, like I mentioned earlier, vultures are also really amazing. And I think it must be. So I would probably go with vultures. I'd say to see the South Africa from the top like they do. I think must be really. And if you just see how these birds fly around in the sky, and the height that they get up to, and the views that they must have from up there must be really incredible. So if I think I have to be a bird, I'll probably be a vulture. And if I have to be an animal, I'll probably go for a leopard. So it must be nice to be up in the trees, lying around all day. And I just think a leopard is a really amazing animal. So it's they have to get really close to their prey and stalk them really up close in order for them to catch them. So I'm just a bit of a leopard lover. So yeah. So Karine also asked me, at school, is there a program explaining endangered species and how do they behave? Karine, I do think that there is quite a few curriculums that contain a lot of environmental education in them. I know the EWT itself is actively involved in quite a few of those. We've got a program called Guardians of the Future, which contains a lot of that information under our conservation, one of our conservation projects. So they interact with quite a lot of schools and teachers and give them content to add and speak about. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Then I've got a question from a pupil from grade 7 at Fustrup School, from Anne Fitzgerald. She says, how long is the bird's wingspan? Cheryl, I assume you're speaking about vultures, because that's what I spoke about in the talk. I think a leopard-faced vulture, which is the biggest vulture, its wingspan can be up to 2.7, 2.8 meters. So almost close to 3 meters. So that's incredible wingspan. So yeah, that's how wide it could be. So you can imagine when those birds fly around, and that's why they often have these interactions with electrical infrastructure like power lines when they sit at the top, because of those huge wingspans. They can basically bridge those gaps between two live or earth and live components. So that's one of their biggest problems that they do have is, with a wingspan like that, it often doesn't work in their favor. So Lungile has asked me, would it be possible to have a honey badger as a pet? If so, who can I ask? I urgently need a honey badger. Look, Lungile, like I said, as the Endangered Wildlife Trust, we don't really encourage people to take animals out of the wild and have wild animals as tame animals. So I wouldn't encourage you to do that. And secondly, I don't think you want a honey badger, to be perfectly honest. You missed my first talk quite possibly, but in my first episode, I spoke about a big male lion of about 250 to 270 kilograms lying in a river, and a honey badger approaching it, and the male lion getting up and basically walking away from the honey badgers. So honey badgers are fierce. I know they're very popular. There's lots of good information out there in YouTube videos about honey badgers, but trust me, I don't think you want to have a honey badger as a pet. You're going to have your hands full. And like I said, we don't really want people to take them out of the wild and have them as pets. So I hope that answers your question. Eleanor's asked me, has the virus situation reduced or allowed for an increase in poaching? Are the rangers still patrolling? So Eleanor, yes, rangers are still considered essential service, the same as what we as conservationists are. So wildlife management, etc. in South Africa is still considered as an essential service, and I know the anti-poaching patrols and rangers do definitely patrol. I think it's a little bit too early to say whether poaching has really increased. We are sitting in a situation in Southern Africa where rangers are under lots of pressure due to poaching. We all know about the rhino poaching crisis. Elephants. Then there's also a lot of snaring and the bushmeat trade, which is very active. I think we are, as conservationists and as an organisation, there are some concerns around whether there will be a major increase. I think the potential is there for it to happen. There's going to be lots of job losses in South Africa and in the world for that matter, and that might that might cause an increase in poaching activity. So that it might be possible that that will happen. So yeah, I hope that answers your question. Alistair Stalker said Cape vultures are regulars on the Cradle Nature Reserve. Yeah, Alistair, that's great to hear. Like I said, you know, the Cape vulture colonies are located very close to the Cradle, actually, to the Cradle of Humankind. For those of you that don't know what Alistair is speaking about, that's an area just outside of Gauteng. So, yeah, the Cradle Nature Reserve is just outside Gauteng, and it's good to hear that the Cape vultures are regulars there. Right, I'm just looking at some of the questions. Eleanor asked, what is the present status of Egyptian vultures? Eleanor, that's a very good question. I can answer for you in South Africa. I know that now during the lockdown time in South Africa, there was actually an Egyptian vulture spotted close to Witbank, which is in the central part of South Africa between Kruger Park and Johannesburg, you can basically say. So there is the odd sighting in South Africa every year and there, but it's really few and far between. I know in Kruger National Park there was 1 or 2 sightings in the last 2 years or so, but there's not many in South Africa at the moment. I think they are sort of considered to be migrants now that come through every now and again, and if you're lucky enough, you'll see one. But and up in the north part of Africa, I would have actually travelled up to Egypt and etc. and Addis Ababa just before during the lockdown, and we obviously had to cancel our trip to go up there and help with some of the impacts of the electrical infrastructure on Egyptian vultures up there. So I would have then been able to answer your question a little bit better, but hopefully after lockdown I'll go up there and then I will be able to have a little bit more information. But that's the information I have for now for South Africa. We do have birds of prey experts. You're welcome to drop in an email in our program, Andre Boerter and Dr. Gareth Tate, etc. Would be able to better answer that question for you if you want the status in the whole of Africa. All right. So Vuyokazi has asked me, with less activity from the construction industry and general public, it would be assumed that the general welfare of wildlife has improved and a decline in the mortality rate worldwide should be noticed. Do you perhaps know if there are any studies to support this or prove this otherwise? So, Vuyo, this actually speaks to one of the questions I had earlier, as well as, you know, what's the impact of COVID been on animals in general, and has it had positive and negative effects? I think this sort of ties in with your question now again. I think to some degree there's animals that really embrace this and have really helped. You know, that COVID could basically give them a bit of a break from tourism, etc. And stuff like roadkill is definitely reduced. I think it's difficult to say whether there's actually been a decline or not, because we don't have a lot of people out there monitoring and reporting incidents to us. Human wildlife conflict might have increased to a degree, maybe not. But it's still too early to say. So all of our programs inside EWT are, you know, putting that it's currently on the table to look at it, especially with regards to roads, etc., to try and determine whether there has been a decrease in the amount of roadkill, and, you know, has, you know, less vultures been electrocuted on power lines, you know, has there been less human wildlife conflict between you know, wild dogs and farmers, etc. So yes, it's an interesting one. So but yeah, I think, you know, only time will tell. We will be able to probably give a more accurate answer to that once we have the COVID issue resolved, and once it's back open again, then I think we'll analyze all that data and we'll be able to give you a better answer then. So I hope that actually answers your question. Another question here from Anne: does snakes get ticks? So yes, Anne, I don't know if you saw that mamba picture, there's actually a tick on them. So it does happen, yes. So it's a good observation. Yes, they do have ticks every now and again. Then Heinz asked me, do you had interactions with ostriches in the wild, especially during the mating period? Yes, Hein, unfortunately I have. And they're equally as dangerous as most other things, especially male ostriches. I know of male ostriches kept us pinned under a vehicle, I think it was for 2 or 3 hours once, and when we were out in the field. So there's no chance of getting out when a male ostrich got you pinned somewhere. And they are quite aggressive, like I said, especially in mating season. And when they have nests close by, you're definitely going to have some issues with male ostriches. So especially for those of you in South Africa or dealing with ostriches that will know, if their shins get red, they get like a red coloration, then you must know the male ostriches are definitely going to give you a bit of appeal. So so yes, that's definitely a thing to look out for when out in the wild. Then Kishalan asked me what's your advice to be around buffalo herds and safe distances to keep from them. Kish, I assume you're asking when driving, so what your question is. So yeah, look, I mean, buffaloes generally around cars. I always said, I think in my previous episode as well, I explained that you must always give yourself enough time to get away from the animals. You must be able to work out how quickly, in the situation that I'm in now, am I giving myself enough space to get away from the animal? And that, in my opinion, goes for all animals, buffalo included. You've seen some recent videos being shared on social media of buffalo attacking vehicles, and when you let animals get that close to your vehicle, it's almost too late to do anything about it. So you have to be really careful when it comes to your distance with animals. But I would say always work out if that animal is going to charge now. Do I have enough time to really move out of the way, or to get out of the way when that happens? Then Lizzie has asked me, are safari trips, holidays ethical, safe for the animals? Yes, generally. Lizzie, I assume you haven't been out to safari yet, so yes, it is generally safe. You normally get taken out by guides that are qualified, and we as conservationists definitely encourage people to go to these tourism destinations, and those guys are very well trained, and they can normally read the behavior of the animals quite well. So for them, it's they're qualified. Like I said, many of them have got loads of years of experience under their belts. So yes, they will be able to keep you safe during your safari. And there's a lot of places around Africa which practice safaris very ethically. So yes, but you're welcome to get in touch with me. I'll be able to tell you which of those are the ones to really go for. And you can also see from a lot of information available what are some of the stuff that some of the lodges that do ethical safaris. And but yes, it's perfectly safe for the animals. Animals are not really affected too much by it. A lot of them are very used to it. So yes, I hope that answers your questions. I see Narina's asked me why are vultures bald? Okay. Okay, good question. That's the first one for me. I think it's because a lot of the time they feed with their heads inside the carcass. You can imagine the state of decay of a lot of animals. When vultures go and feed on them, they've often been dead for a few days, and to get a lot of that stuck on your head must be quite a thing. So I think that's why their heads are bald. Is when they feed. All the blood, etc., that gets stuck to them, that it's quite easy to come off again. So, yeah. So there's I hope that sort of answers your question. That would be my guess why they are bald. All right. Sorry, guys. I'm just trying to answer as many questions here as possible. Do you know which bat species in South Africa are endangered, and does EWT work on any projects monitoring bat species? From Gil. We are part of SABAP. We have a person sitting on that panel, which is the South African, I think the South African Bat Association guys. So yeah, we do. We don't have active projects on bats at the moment, and I can't really tell you which are endangered, to be perfectly honest. Once again, you can drop me a mail. We do have people inside our organization which would be able to give you that answer. But it is quite an interesting topic, and obviously with COVID now and bats being very prominent and coming to the fore, that could be a possibility that there's an increase on work around bats, definitely. So yeah, we'll definitely bear that in mind. And like I said, there might be some people in our organization which will work on bats going forward, most definitely. Then Diane says, thank you for a wonderful session. Pleasure, Diane. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Then Lungile Ngwenyas asked me, what is the most memorable lesson that you've learned from animals? Do you think humans can adopt? Gee, that's a very, very good question. And I had actually thought about this, Lungile, before. You know, I think we've got a lot to learn from animals as people. And I think the one thing is the way that they all live in harmony. And by that way, I don't mean the fact that, you know, lions catch antelope and everything else. Obviously, that's not like the harmony I'm speaking about. But they all just interact and they live together without really, you know, judging each other or, you know, really being negative towards each other and stuff. They just get on with it. Animals just live together. There's no funny business around it. They all know where they all fit in, and everybody gets along. So I think that's probably the biggest thing to learn from animals is that you know, we all just get along. There's no funny business between different kinds of people. Everybody looks differently. Nobody gets judged, but you know, animals just get on with it. So yeah, it's that's probably one of the best lessons I think that that I've learned over the years. And then yeah, I've got a few very interesting questions here. In your line of work, you get a lot of attention from tourists, especially females, and like the camel man from the 80s or airline pilots. Yeah, Johan, good question. Yeah, look, I mean, we as conservationists that out in the field, you do get attention from a lot of people. I think a lot of people envy what conservationists do, and yeah, so I think, you know, attention all around, definitely. People, you know, very interested in you know, what conservationists do, and being out in the field and working with these animals definitely gets a lot of attention. So yeah, no, definitely. That definitely happens. And then there's a lot of people that says, thanks for the fun-filled chat. Yeah, guys, I'm glad you all enjoyed that. I really like doing this, and you know, there's a lot of interaction with people afterwards, which is really great. You know, there's a lot of people that send me questions on email straight after the sessions, which we interact with a lot. I know a lot of people are following the EWT because of these sessions, which is really great. So yeah, we are definitely you know, loving this wild chats and interaction with all the people. We really want to try and do this a little bit more. So I'm glad you guys all really enjoy it, and you know, that we can really entertain you guys. Just a few more questions here. A question from Chris: do all continents have vultures? Gee, you put me on the spot there now, Chris. As far as I know, the MSAP, in which one of my colleagues that works on the Vulture for Africa project comes, Andre Buerta, which will be better placed to answer the vulture-related questions. I think, you know, obviously in Asia we've got vultures. They're just busy with the MSAP at the moment, which is the MSAP plan, which includes Europe. America's got black vultures there, which I know of. Obviously, Asia's got quite a few vulture species as well. Europe has got the Eurasian griffon, which I've seen myself. Obviously, in Africa, we've got quite a few vulture species. So I think most continents do have, yes. There might be one that I'm missing here, which I can't think of off the top of my head. But yeah, that's I hope that answers that question for you. I don't think there are any vultures in Australia. Yes, correct. That's the one which we definitely don't. We recently helped a organization called Raptor Refuge in Tasmania to work with Tas Networks to get a partnership up and going there between the utility and the that Raptor Refuge, which is an NGO. And yeah, vultures do definitely not occur there. I know there's wedge-tailed eagles, which are quite badly affected, the sea eagles, and a few others which I was lucky enough to see when I was over there. So so yes, you are right. There's definitely no vultures in Australia as far as I know. But remember what I said earlier in my chat, have wings, can fly. So, you know, vultures can get all over the place. So yes, there is definitely that chance. Guys, I know there's a lot more questions that people are sending through, but that's all that I have unfortunately got time for today. So I hope that answered most of your questions for everybody. So I'm hoping that But yeah, please do ask me those questions on email, on WhatsApp, even if you guys want to. So just let me know, and I will definitely help you guys to answer a lot of that, or put you in touch with the experts that work on those particular species to answer those questions. So, but thanks very much. I think it was a really good interactive session, and I'm glad you guys all enjoyed it. So, so I hope you guys have a wonderful weekend, and remember, today's Endangered Species Day, and think about all those guys working hard out there to protect these endangered species. So thank you very much.